I would like to go about the religious angle here. The Cookies had always used religion as a major form or a tool to consolidate their kingdom. I would like to draw your attention to two writers. One is P.S. Howkeep and one is Mark Howkeep. These two writers have played a pivotal role in making the thought leadership for the Kuki separate land or the Zalengam. When we talk about P.S. Howkeep, what P.S. Howkeep talks about land of Zalengam is that it basically includes the entire Chattogram hill tract of Bangladesh. It includes around two-thirds of Manipur. Some maps it shows 66, some map it shows 71 around there. Let's take around two-thirds. It includes large parts of Venugopal, Kamjong, Chandel, Churachandpur, almost like a moon. It takes the entire southern and the eastern part of Manipur, basically. And it also includes some parts of Burma, the Sagaing region, the Chin state of Burma. So this kind of thing, it's a dream for all Western powers. Why? Because when they get these kind of things, it takes away the only warm water port from Bangladesh. It takes away India's actist policy towards our Southeast Asia corridor, almost like a second Pakistan it creates. And third thing, what it creates is that your Burma also loses its access to rest of the Western Gateway. And this becomes a church-controlled crown colony because both P.S. Howkeep and Mark Howkeep call it a land of Christ or a country of Christ. And this purpose of demanding separation or separate administration from Manipur, like what Didi was referring to, this is very important. The church, even in Nagaland and other places, when they cannot outright portray separatism or these things, they always try to break up states with Christian majority regions from where from where they can dominate local politics. Dominating local politics is a major agenda of the church. It has always been like that. So these kind of things, we can observe these things, and I would highly recommend you to search this article based on it, Insurgency Northeast, the Religious Angle in Indian Defense Review. They have covered this angle very accurately from the military perspective. I won't go into much detail there. You can refer that later. Now, coming back to this matter, when we go further into these things, religious persecution in Manipur has been observed a lot. I would stick to Manipur here, but let us say one thing, the Cookies had been involved in horrible kinds of cultural genocides and horrible forms of mass murders and religious persecution in states like Tripura, in states like Assam also. So those things I will skip for now, but let's just say their crimes are not just confined to Manipur. So coming back to Manipur, these things, I would like to start from around 1970s. Churachandpur was actually considered to be the ancestral land of the Meiteis and various other Janajatis. Many of them identify themselves as individual Janajatis like Aimol and other things, and many of them consider themselves under the Naga umbrella. So Churachandpur, when we see this place, this is the epicenter of violence. We find definite presence of Manipuris from around 236 AD itself. Now, what happened was that, so there is no doubt that there are native people there. There cannot be any doubt, and their villages can be found right up to the Burmese border. That old. So that is why. So in this case, what happened was that in Churachandpur, what we observed was a systematic Kashmir-like model to drive the native out and to engineer a demographic change. What happened was that there was large-scale illegal immigration through the extremely I would say nearly non-existent border security. They would come, they would settle, they would make illegal villages, and the church played a major role here. They actually tried to convert Meitei Christians also, Meiteis also, or the other non-Christians also, but they accounted for the identity politics. A Kugi Christian was rated higher than a Meitei Christian. So-called Mayang Christian was rated lower than that. So this hierarchy in Christianity, Mayang means outsider. That is a common term which is used in Manipur. So this hierarchy was maintained there. And then what happened was that under such a situation, we saw a systematic attempt to deny them of their ancestral lands. higher than market price values were offered to buy up their lands. And when we look into this Churachandpur or other areas, the people who settled in Churachandpur, particularly the Maitis, they were not economically well off. So they had a lot of problems there. They were, and under these conditions where their survival itself was difficult, they were shut out from professional good economic businesses, like lucrative businesses like hardware stores and other things. They were not allowed. There was horrible discrimination against their children in schools. Like, say, I would like to name some of these things, like, say, Young Learner School. It's a so-called secular name, but it's funded from an organization like the USA, from having links to that. There the children were mandatorily forced to read Bible. Ebenezer Academy, their videos came out of child soldiers being trained. In fact, after this violence, there has been cookie areas, there has been large scale training and mobilization of child soldiers. One of these church controlled institutions like Ebenezer Academy, there was training of child soldiers for these purposes. Then there was Rayban School and College. Rayban College got an autonomous certification, unfortunately. There are also many students, not just Maiti, even non Maiti, other people. Also, there are plenty of eyewitness accounts of horrible discrimination in Saltbrook School and these schools, where people would be called as stone worshippers, devil worshippers. Their customs and traditions would be mocked repeatedly. Incentives would be given to them for conversion and other kinds of things. They would be discriminated in terms of scholarships and other things. Before it was digitized, their OBC certificate, even those, the small percentage which were getting OBC, that had to be renewed every 6 months. Getting that was required so much bribe due to the high presence of cookie officials. Yeah, and I would also like to include one thing regarding there. Didi was telling the low representation of Maitis in there. Understand this. A population who was supposed to have over 50% of the state, 53% according to 2011 census, although according to my estimation it's around now 44 or 45, but let's keep it to the census value. So 53% population has only three top officials in Manipur police. So you will see a lot of narratives calling Manipur police as Meitei police. It's not true. They have only three police officers in top officers in the Manipur police during May violence out of 17 top posts. So this is the lack of representation, level of lack of representation among all these kind of things. So this has also led to a lot of legislative problems, which is another root cause, but I would stick to the religious thing first. Whenever the cookies came, there is a thought that Zalangam came recently or it is a recent dream. No, it's not a dream. Zalangam has been a very well planned. Zalangam is their country concept, which we just discussed, that they call it Zalangam or something like land. Roughly translated, it comes free land or something like that. So this Zalangam is not a dream. This Zalangam has been there for decades, and there was systematic planning to achieve this. And this planning dates back to 1980s itself. What happened was that the illegal immigration in Churachandpur, as it started to increase, the ancestral people started to migrate. The people started to migrate from their ancestral lands. At that time, also another misconception has to be corrected. There is something like a Manipur Land Revenue and Act, Land Reforms Act of 1960, which tells that that only scheduled tribes can buy land in the hills and other areas. It's not as simple as that. Understand the situation like this. More than 90% of the area of Manipur is scheduled as a protected land. You, as an indigenous people, cannot buy land there. That is okay. You have your ancestral land there. However, there are something called district councils. That district council virtually has enjoyed a separate administration since 1971 itself. They are even allowed to impose taxes according to the legal taxable activities. They have all sorts of power according to that 1971 Act, District Councils Act. So they are basically already enjoying a separate administration since 1971. So in this situation, when we look into this perspective, these people who are there, Maitis in these areas, they do not have any electoral representation. Those are reserved seats. They cannot stand for election. these district councils, it is impossible for them to get representation or seats in there practically. So they do not have any representation in there. If they want to buy any land anywhere, they have to get a permission of these district councils, which were not given. They could only buy land in the form of cooperatives or other things. So basically, if you lose your ancestral land once due to economic crisis or something, you have to migrate. There is impossible. You just cannot buy land in those Churachandpur and other areas. So systematically, this kind of demographic manipulation was done. And the Hindu population in Churachandpur, it fell to around less than 5% by 2011. So this majority versus minority narrative also is nonsense. Systematically, a Kashmir-like population was brought down, and then the death blow was given in 2023. So this is the thing. So whenever we look into this Churachandpur thing, also all other kinds of nasty things were done, government supplies and other things during schemes beneficiary and other things. There, those kinds, there was all forms of discrimination, and then there were threats, bullying to try to not get them to vote. Voting there, particularly for the Meiteis or even those in the non-indigenous Bharatiyas who are living there in Manipur, it was nearly impossible for them to exercise their electoral rights. They threats and other things for the militant groups. And these militant groups have used this kind of hold on these areas to act as a captive vote bank for several political parties. And these kind of things which they did, this had granted them a lot of shady decisions, which I will come to later.